For some of our more advanced learners, we typically use direct instruction programs to teach academic goals, such as reading, writing, arithmetic, your 3 Rs. So, what are some of our favorite direct instruction programs and how can we implement them effectively?
Hi, I'm Shira.
And I'm Shayna.
We are behavior analysts that create weekly content about how to teach kids with autism so that they make real progress. And we create shareable resources to make your job just a little easier. Today's topic is all about direct instruction programs. And if you want more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated on new video releases.
So, I've been a direct instruction teacher for ages. I actually worked at a clinic for direct instruction and always thought it was for kids with autism or kids with learning disabilities. And then my daughter never learned how to read. They were teaching her sight words in school, but it didn't seem to compute with her. So I was like, okay, well, we need a phonics-based approach. So I took out my Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons. And despite the fact that she hated Teacher Mommy, the curriculum itself was just so systematic. And it was a really great way to ease her into phonics. And it really was easy once she got past that whole Teacher Mommy. And she learned how to read fairly quickly after a few years of trying to teach her, well, the school trying to teach her sight words.
So, what is direct instruction? So, when we talk about DI or direct instruction, we're referring to the set of curriculum that are evidence based. They're somewhat scripted. They are written on based on ABA principles. They're really designed around reviewing a lot of things that were mastered previously and created around learning in very small increments so that the kids always feel successful. But it's clearly defined. The instructions are very clear and they really help accelerate learning.
So about 40 years ago, there was somebody named Siegfried Engelmann and Dr. Wesley Baker. Hold on a second. Let's cut that a sec. Please cut that. That was really awful. Butcher. Thank you. About 40 years ago, somebody named Siegfried Engelmann and Dr. Wesley Becker and their colleagues they went into schools and they recognized that these schools in the United States, especially in the lower income areas, weren't teaching the same curriculum as other schools. And kids were falling behind. And they thought there should be a way to rectify that. So they actually created a curriculum and they named it direct instruction. And it was scripted. So it was scripted so that every single teacher could follow the script and implement the exact same curriculum across school boards, across school districts, in specific areas. And then they tested it and it was evidence-based. It worked. They brought school scores up or academic scores up in these school districts that traditionally didn't have high academic scores. And, then they've used it for years. And then the special needs community got a hold of it and went, wow, this curriculum is amazing. And this curriculum really works. So now we implement it with kids with special needs as well. And it's been adopted pretty much all across the US. It's in thousands of schools in Canada, in the UK, in Australia. So it's fabulous. For those of you who want more information about direct instruction, there is a website. It's called the National Institute for Direct Instruction. We'll put that in the show notes as well, but it's fabulous. It's got a ton of information there about not only what is direct instruction, but there's research articles about it. There is a whole bunch of different curriculum on there broken up in terms of here's what you can use for reading, here's what you can use for math, here's what you can use for spelling, etc. But I'm biased. I've been teaching it for years, but I love it.
And one of our, principles of ABA is technological, and that's what I love about this program is that everybody's going to do it the same way, and we can really know what's happening in the sessions if we have an instructor running a language for learning program. It's not up to that instructor as to how they're teaching it. So that's something I really love. And why don't we get into the more specific ones that we use and that we're familiar with?
So in terms of the ones that we typically use, for instance, for reading, let me just kind of go back and say, when I first started in ABA, we used to have, a matching letters program or a matching letters to phonics program. And we have to have a bunch of other discrete trial teaching programs that we would just create ourselves. And then I discovered direct instruction and it does it all for you. So why would you reinvent the wheel when you can do this and do it fairly quickly? So, the program programs that we typically use for reading, the thing that I start out with would be Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons. It's by Siegfried Engelmann, and it's phenomenal. It breaks it down. It's very parent friendly as well. So if parents want to use it with their kids, but we typically use it with ABA therapists. And, you're typically supposed to run at least 3 lessons a week. And that's your target. And it really goes through from, identifying specific sounds. And it starts with, I think, 3 to 5 sounds it starts off with, and then it combines those sounds into words, and then it makes stories out of those words. And then by the end, I mean, you're reading at probably the end of a grade 1 level. So it's really cool.
And I love that it includes the comprehension piece as well. It's not just about reading the phonics, but it goes into little stories that, we ask questions about.
And for kids who don't understand those questions, the WH program, we can create a whole separate WH program for that and skip that piece of it and just do the decoding with the Teach Your Child to Read. But it's great for those kids who do understand those WH questions, because it does have the ability in there to ask those comprehension questions about what they just read. So it's phenomenal.
And the Teach Your Child to Read is kind of an abridged version of Reading Mastery, which is a lot more comprehensive and bigger, more expensive. But it is great for classrooms or students who, you are working through it a little bit more slowly and a little bit more comprehensively. But it's similar principles.
Reading Mastery, I call it really pretty. It's got, a workbook, it's got the textbook, it's got pictures and color. It's really nice. And I mean, it's probably $500, whereas Teach Your Child to Read is $20, and it's ugly. You go through it, it's like, you might have to rewrite a few things because, it's really not meant for kids in a classroom, but it does the job. But Reading Mastery is pretty. It's got the color in it, and it breaks things down a little bit more. So it goes a little bit more slowly for those kids who are having a tough time picking up on things. And then there is something called Teach Your Child to Read Well, and it's by Michael Maloney. And he incorporates not only the direct instruction, but he also incorporates the fluency-based instruction. So what fluency-based instruction is it takes the concept of, well, it's not enough to read at 100% accuracy, but you also have to be fluent. You need to be quick at it, because if you're not a fast reader, you really can't read. So it takes every 5 lessons, it gives you a quote unquote like fluency check. And you have to go through words and you go through stories, and you have to make sure that you get a certain pace before moving on to the next lesson. So it's really great because it incorporates both the fluency based instruction and the direct instruction into one curriculum. And that's the Teach Your Child to Read Well.
We had Michael Maloney on one of our earlier podcasts, so we will link that here. He is a fabulous resource, and you should all check that out. The next category of programs that we use direct instruction for is language or comprehension. So this would start, when a learner is about an SK age. They've mastered some of the beginner programs. They're working more at an intermediate level in terms of language, starting to get into, answering questions, feature function class, a lot more of the language-based program. We would include something like Language for Learning. So again, for the same reason, instead of pulling all these programs separately and teaching them how to answer this question and this label and this color and this feature, it does it all for you in this really nice program with great pictures. So we would start Language for Learning at around that stage, at the intermediate level.
And Language for Learning starts really simple. It really, it instructs you to stand up, and it says, what am I doing? And the person's supposed to say standing up. And then you're supposed to sit down. And you're supposed to say, what am I doing? And you're supposed to say sitting down. And then it starts to incorporate some pronouns, right? So, okay, you stand up. What are you doing? I am standing up. What am I doing? You are sitting down. And then it gets into things like, full and not full. So there's some negation in there, but then it gets into full and empty. So not full is empty. Right. But it gets into all of that, but then it starts into longer and longer sentences. So like Shira said, most learners have completed, some feature function class training, are speaking in sentences by the time this curriculum's in there. But what I really love about it is it teaches our learners to answer questions when they're presented in varied ways. It also teaches our students to really use language across different areas at once. So instead of saying, okay, well, now it's time for prepositions, I'm going to put my preposition hat on and either answer with this question or this answer, this answer, or this answer. You're presented with multiple questions about different things all at once.
And it does tell you exactly what the learner is supposed to answer because, if you say, stand up, what are you doing? And the learner says, stand up, that wouldn't help us correctly build a sentence. So the learner needs to say, standing up. So it takes it into very, very small bits so that you're able to build it into longer sentences. And it tells you exactly what their response is supposed to be. So while it feels a little bit, rigid, you can mix it up, but the response has to be what they're telling you it is because it builds on that so well. It is meant for choral responding, so it's meant to be run with a group or with a classroom, which it's great for, but it doesn't have to be. You can do it on a one-on-one level.
If you want to see some videos of language for learning being run, there's some great YouTube videos out there of teachers in a classroom doing that, and it's really nice. So look at that and see how it's run. The next one after language for learning would be language for thinking. It's kind of like the next part of language for learning. And language for thinking is just a bit more complex, gets into more why questions and gets into some analogies and deductions and really starting to use those inference skills. And then after language for thinking, so with the language comprehension piece, it's language for learning, language for thinking. And then you've got comprehension A, comprehension B, comprehension C, and it goes all the way up. Comprehension A is also called thinking basics. So, language for learning, language for thinking, thinking basics, comprehension B, comprehension, like it goes on, but we can write that list for you. So comprehension A, B, and C, it's just getting into more complex thinking, and it's fabulous for that comprehension piece.
And then the next area is spelling. We use the spelling one very often. Spelling mastery has a whole bunch of different sets. It really takes a learner from beginning and end to spelling. It goes through all of the skills required to be able to learn how to spell in a phonics-based way so that it's clear and really understandable for the learner.
I usually implement Spelling Mastery A once a student's hit about lesson 50 with Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons. That is not set in stone. I don't know if there's research behind that. That would be a great research project. But usually by lesson 50, students are able to read enough that they're understanding the words and being able to read the words in Spelling Mastery A. So that's why we started there and not right at the beginning. It gets into Spelling Mastery B, C. It gets into spelling rules too. And it's actually cool because, I learned to read in a very phonics based way, but some of the instructors I work with didn't. And, we're all learning rules in spelling mastery, like, oh, the I before E except after C rule, which a lot of people know, but there's other little ones. Like I didn't know why you put CK on some words and just KE or other K on other words. And it teaches you those rules. So it's kind of cool that the instructor learns along with the student about these rules.
Moving into math, there are a couple different ones for math. I've used something called Saxon Math, which is a much cheaper version of a direct instruction program. It's like one or two booklets. And what I like about it is it goes into a lot of like calendar type math, really functional style math, days of the week and things like that. And also gets into concepts like more or less, full or empty, things like that.
I forgot about Saxon Math. I love that program. I used that a long, long time ago. I'm picturing the white cover. It might be a different cover now. It's a great book. There's also something called Connecting Math Concepts, A, B, C, D, etc., that I use often. Connecting Math Concepts is great because it gets into those skills that Shira was mentioning as well, but it's slower. So if you've got a slower learner, Connecting Math Concepts is a great way to go because it breaks things down a lot. Whereas Saxon Math is a bit faster. So again, depending on your learner.
And then Michael Maloney also has a math program, Teach Your Child Math Well. And he does the same thing to fluency. So anything addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and counting, where it's not enough to know how to count and how to do math. You have to be fast because don't really have the skill if you're not fluent at it. So he takes all of those concepts and puts it to fluency, teaches it, and then does the fluency drills. And it's a really great program.
I love the Maloney Teach Your Child Well programs because it's not about comprehension. It's really just about those basic facts, like it's the addition, subtraction, counting, etc. And if you can't do those quickly, it gets in the way of other things, right? So if you're doing word problems, if you're doing calendar, if you're doing other things, and you can't count, that's going to slow you down. So sometimes implementing, I call it the Maloney program, but implementing the Maloney program in addition to either Saxon math or connecting math concepts is a really great way to go because kids are learning to count quickly at the same time that they're doing other math skills.
And so many math programs in schools these days are language based. And it's really hard for a lot of our learners to be learning the language of the math as well as the skill of the math. And so even if they're learning a different style in school, kind of using something like Maloney to get their fluency up will really help them.
And then there's some writing programs as well that we use with our learners. One of them is called Expressive Writing Skills, and it's fabulous. It breaks things down a lot. And another one is called Reasoning and Writing. Reasoning and Writing goes A, B, C, D, E, etc., all the way up. But reasoning and writing is, your basic, here's how to write a sentence, here's the grammar, capital periods, that type of thing. And, you get into something like reasoning and writing C at that point in time, it's taking a lot of the skills from the expressive writing series and it's going into the grammar piece of it. And, you use the name first, Shayna, and then you use she in the second sentence. And here's why. And here's, don't use and too much because that's a run-on sentence and do this and then there's checks at the end and you write a paragraph and then it checks, you've got 3 paragraph checks and it says, okay, did you use capitals and periods, did you do this, did you do that? So it's really cool because it gives you not only the way to write a paragraph but also some of those grammar skills that so often school boards use and teach, right?
So those are the most common ones that we use. There might be a couple more out there, but and at any point that you're doing any of these with a learner, you can always pull out and target a concept individually. So these are grouped in lessons, and then there are exercises within the lessons. And if a student is struggling with the prepositions exercise, you could put the lesson on hold, practice prepositions, and then either continue with other exercises or wait until they master that and put it back in. So it's not an all or nothing approach. The students really feel successful because they're practicing the same skill so often. It's much easier for them. It tells you how to error correct, and they could really be easily corrected and then moved on and keep practicing again.
So, skill introduction in these programs is cumulative, right? A new skill is taught, it's practiced extensively, but yet there's other maintenance things that are pulled in each lesson. So kids feel successful because they're continually doing maintenance things. It's great because the maintenance things keep getting practiced and that skill introduction is slow, but it's great. And then all of a sudden in 100 easy lessons, your student knows how to read. It's really awesome that way. Errors can be easily corrected. There's a specific error correction method that they're teaching in these books as well. And if you look at it in terms of, well, direct instruction, that's for teachers. And how is it ABA? Well, it's ABA because A, it's evidence-based, but B, at the very start, you're conducting a pretest or an assessment, and then you're collecting data throughout, and you're making sure that you're systematically correcting and practicing those errors so that students are learning. You can collect data using our data sheet, or you can collect data, from a handwritten way or, plus minus way. I really like our data sheet. That's why we're giving it to you guys for free. Yeah, there's lots of different ways, but making sure that you are doing those beginner assessments and, collecting data and then doing assessments throughout.
Yeah, and the data doesn't have to be too cumbersome. It's something like a rating scale or on each lesson or on each exercise. And the goal is to monitor the student's progress through those exercises. And because they're so repetitive, we don't need to be so slow and, tedious with the data because we know it's going to repeat anyway. We just have to get to like a minimum level of like, should we move on or not?
Yeah, many of these programs are implemented in a classroom setting. So really make sure that you check out other videos on classroom reinforcement as well. We've got other videos on that, so check that out too.
For more information on direct instruction programs, click the link on or around this video or in the description to get your free direct instruction datasheet. We also encourage you to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future videos and leave a like and comment below if you have further questions.